So in this video, we will be playing around with the mouse click event listener, which means that we will be clicking our mouse on the slide or on an object, and we will make the object do something. In our case, we will animate it with GSAP, but you can do so much more with this. You can change variables, you can do whatever you like. So I also have this game we'll be making in which we have a list of objects scattered around our landscape here, and I click on them and the object disappears and the text for the object disappears, and it is amazing. Let's go. So I'm really excited because I managed to find a way to move objects by clicking on them without setting any triggers here, except the JavaScript trigger. And I did that by implementing the event listener for the click, for the mouse click. Now, you know from my video on moving the satellite after my mouse cursor that you can implement an event listener which listens for the mouse movement and executes a function every time the mouse moves. Well, now we can execute a function every time the mouse clicks. How are we doing that? Well, first off, I'm selecting my space shuttle here with the accessibility text. So if I right click it and click on accessibility here, this object has the accessibility name of shuttle. And I am selecting this PNG object by using the query selector method, using the data accessibility text, and the text is shuttle. And I'm storing all of this in a variable right here. Then I'm adding an event listener that will listen every time the mouse clicks on the shuttle object. And it will move it using GSAP and the from-to function. It will move it from a position of 250 on the x-axis and a rotation of 30 to a position of 500 on the x and a rotation of 90 over 3 seconds. So I copied this code into my execute JavaScript trigger right here, which is set to execute when the timeline starts on this slide. And I'm gonna just publish my course. And now if I click here, nothing happens, but if I click on the shuttle, it moves, it executes the movement and it stays there. And if I click on it again, it moves again. So there you go. This is really exciting because I can just declare multiple objects at the start of the slide. So when the timeline starts, and then select them all when I click on them. And you'll see this later. But for now, I'm just gonna try and execute this with the document. So I'm just gonna add so I'm gonna try adding document.query selector here to see if this works. This will execute if a click is recorded in the document. So let's see how this works. So if I click anywhere, the shuttle moves as well. So it can listen to clicks in my entire document. And in our case, the document starts here and goes like this. So this is the document right here, not the menu. If I click on the, oh, it's the menu as well. Well, what do you know? When I tested it, it wasn't the menu. So this can be very gimmicky. So this might not work in all of your use cases, but so for example, every time I click on this, every time I click the buttons, if I click here on the volume controls, it triggers the animation. If I click on the settings button, it triggers the animation on the resources. So yeah, this might not be exactly what you want, but it's important to know that it is possible. It is possible to make something happen when you click anywhere in this document, the document being the web page. So the web page which hosts this storyline player. So now with that in mind, I thought, okay, how can I use this? What's the use case for this, having these elements on click? And I thought of this this mini game where it's basically a hidden objects game, and you basically have to collect all of these so you can eliminate them off the list. So how can we do that? I'm gonna copy the execute JavaScript trigger. I have given each object so an accessibility name. So this is the shuttle. This one is the lander. Sorry, this one is the lander. not the lander PNG. I have to double check this. This is the shuttle. This is the telescope without the PNG, and this is the satellite without the PNG. And I'm gonna move to my code editor now. I'm gonna just duplicate this, and I'm gonna select every object. So I'm gonna add a reference to every object. I need 4 lines here, and the first one is the shuttle, the second one is the satellite, and here I will write satellite as well. So there we go, I have all the 4 objects selected, and I also have to select, so to add a reference to these text boxes here, which I have to give an accessibility name to. So shuttle text, and the second one will be lander text, and the third one will be telescope text, and the fourth one will be satellite text. So back to my code editor right here. I'm gonna make some space to separate these and copy and paste these lines and just add text to each one of them. Make sure to double check if you're implementing this. Make sure the text right here corresponds to the accessibility text, and make sure the variable text is defined as you want it to be. So now that everything is clear, I will begin adding some event listeners. So what I want is when each object is clicked, I want the object to move up a bit, perhaps. Oops, I held down Control. So I want the objects to move up a bit, so float up a bit, and then disappear, and then the text associated with the object disappears. So for example, if I click the shuttle floats up, it disappears, and the text disappears as well, which means we crossed it off our list, we beamed it up. And we have to do this for all 4 of our items. Let's move on to our code editor, and I'm gonna click here and say shuttle.add event listener. So this will trigger when the shuttle is clicked. So in here, first I'm gonna put a to function, and I'm gonna move the shuttle to a y position of, let's express it in y%. So when the shuttle is clicked, I'm gonna first move the shuttle up by -20%. I'm gonna set the shuttle opacity to 0, and then I'm gonna set the shuttle text opacity to 0. So let's see if it works. First, I'm gonna copy all of this into my execute JavaScript trigger, and let's see if it works first. So I'm clicking the shuttle. So the shuttle disappeared, but it didn't go up. So why is that? And if I publish now and click on the shuttle, so I keep trying to get this to get the rocket to move up and then disappear, but it doesn't work. So after much experimenting and after figuring out that I don't want to add this code for each element, so for each of the 4 elements, I decided to create a function. So first I created a GSAP timeline and gave it the name timeline. Then I created this function right here, which is add animation underscore move and disappear. And this has 2 arguments here. So this will take a target and the target text. So for example, the target can be shuttle and shuttle text. The target can be satellite and satellite text. Lander and lander text, telescope and telescope text. Of course, the target can be shuttle and satellite, but the arguments of this function are named target and target text just for us, so we know what to put in here. So this function does the following things. So it takes the target and animates it up by -150 pixels. Let's actually just set this to 50 pixels for a duration of 0.5 seconds and an ease of power1.out. And then it sets its opacity to 0. And then it takes the target text and sets its opacity to 0. And then in our event listener right here for the shuttle, I run this function. So I add the animation to move and disappear for the shuttle and shuttle text, and add the timeline.play function of GSAP, and then you shall see that if I copy this into my execute JavaScript trigger, and if I publish the project, I click on shuttle, boom, there you go. It's amazing. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the elements. So I'm just going to duplicate this function 3 times, so I have four functions. And now I'm just going to call it satellite. So I'm going to listen for when the satellite is clicked. And here I'm going to affect the satellite and the satellite text. And here I'm going to affect the lander. I'm going to listen for when the lander is clicked, and I'm going to affect the lander and the lander text. There we go. And the last one, the last pair is the telescope. So I'm going to listen to the telescope, to when the telescope is clicked. And here I'm going to affect the telescope and the telescope text. So you can already see how clear this is to read. So we know exactly what we're doing here. We declare this function once. If I want to change the duration here from 0.5 to 1 second, or change the movement here to 100 or 10 pixels or whatever, I can just do the change here and it will echo throughout this function. So I don't have to go in each one and change the properties of my GSAP timeline here. So this is a very powerful method. I'm gonna select all of this chunky code and paste it into my JavaScript trigger. And now let's see if this works. So I'm clicking the shuttle, then I'm clicking the satellite. It doesn't work. Telescope does not work. It does not work. So why is that? So when you're changing the accessibility text, do not just press backspace and delete this .png right here, because it won't work. Believe me, I tried this. I was trying to figure out why my objects weren't clicked. Do not do this. Just delete everything and rewrite the accessibility name as you want it. So if I publish this and click the objects now, boom. This is amazing. So I only have to, let me just refresh that. I only have to get these objects once, and then I can manipulate them without any triggers. No triggers, just the JavaScript trigger. Amazing. I never thought I'd be able to do this in Storyline. This is such a revelation to me. So if you like this and you find it helpful, leave a like, subscribe to this channel. We will likely explore this in the future. So we will explore these possibilities because it's amazing. Look at this. Wow.